This Week in Radio Tech, episode 199, is brought to you by the Axia Element Audio Console. Configure an element with the options you want and get exactly the console you need. With user profiles, auto mix minus, and rugged extruded construction, your Axia Element will last through years of format changes. On the web at axiaaudio.com/element. Hey, as engineers bring new technologies into their broadcast facilities, we're figuring out better approaches to old and new problems. Chris Tarr offers up a boatload of tips, tricks, and tools that'll make your life easier at both studio and transmitter sites. Plus, Chris Tobin chimes in, and I'll tell you about a tornado play-by-play coverage facility at an Oklahoma TV station. This Week in Radio Tech starts now. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host, and I am delighted that you're here. I'm delighted that Chris Tarr is here. Otherwise, I'd be here all by myself. Chris Tarr is our co-host on the show. Hey, welcome in, Chris. Come on in. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Okay. I know, real short setup for me. This is the show where we talk about broadcast engineering, radio, audio engineering, the kind of stuff that some of us have been doing for years. I guess I've been doing this since I was about 17 or 18 years old, so that's longer than I care to count. And Chris, not quite as old. He's got a little bit to catch up but he's been in this for a while. We talk about everything from microphones to the mic preamps to audio mixers to distribution systems in the broadcast plant, transmitters, towers, tower technology, all this kind of stuff, and streaming and all the digital technologies. So if you want to know about broadcast engineering for radio, this is where we talk about it. And we'd like to hear your comments. So you're welcome to join in the chat room. If you ever watch the show live, and I hope you do, you can always watch it at gfqlive.tv. And when you bring that website up, there'll be a chat box right below the video, and you can give yourself a nickname if you want to. We enjoy a number of regular people in the chat room. They give us ideas on what to talk about. And I see that Bob Holowenko is again keeping track of our time today. I appreciate that, marking down anything important that I might accidentally say. So anyway, our show is brought to you by Axia and the Axia Element Audio Console. I had a chance this past week to get a lot more experience with an Axia Element console, and I got to tell you, it was a delight. I could really make it do the stuff I wanted to, and I'll tell you that story as we move along in the show today. Well, Tom Ray is not here, but he's trying to get on. He has some internet problems. Chris Tobin is in a meeting, but if he can make it in, he sure will. And Chris Tarr is here, which is good, because Chris Tarr has been posting on Facebook about some really interesting things going on in his life at his broadcast facilities, I guess mainly at 88.9. Chris, well, first of all, man, is it as cold in Wisconsin as it is here in Nashville?
Not anymore. It's warmed up. It's about, I think, 18 degrees, although I'm looking out the window right now at a pretty good amount of snow coming down on the ground. But yeah, we were down to minus 20 something the other day. So it was, and that was without wind chill. That was just minus. That was the air temperature, so it was almost minus 20 the other night. So fortunately, it's warming up a little bit. It's supposed to be still though continuing below zero for the next week or two. Hopefully, we'll get out of the cold snap though. I'd really like that.
I read online, so it must be true. Wisconsin, come for the beer and cheese. Stay because your car won't start.
Exactly. Amen.
That was written about. Is Madison colder than where you are in Milwaukee?
It's west, so yeah. I mean, obviously, the Lake Michigan influences the weather in Milwaukee proper a lot. So in the winter, it's always a little bit warmer. In the summer, it's always a little bit cooler. So as you get out towards, you start going west. I live about 30 miles west of Milwaukee, and it was substantially colder by about 10 degrees. So yeah, it often is.
It's amazing how that huge body of water, Lake Michigan, right? Imagine that huge body of water helps keep Milwaukee warmer, and yet you sure wouldn't want to get in that water.
You don't want to get in that water in July, usually.
Oh, well, warm is a relative thing. Oh, really? Is it still cold in July?
Oh, yeah. No, it doesn't get much above lower 60s in the summer. Okay. But I'll tell you, what's great is when it is in the summer, it's 90, 95 degrees out. You go to the lake and it's 70. So it works it's a great little regulator of temperature. So we got that going for us.
Bodies of water do that. They're what we call in engineering, we call those heat sinks.
Yeah, it's a big old heat sink. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's why power plants can use a body of water Yeah,
there you go.
wick away heat. All right, so enough about bodies of water. So, Chris, this week I had an interesting opportunity I'll tell you about, and then we'll get into it after you tell us your stories. I had an opportunity to go to Oklahoma City, to a TV station there, which is probably the premier TV station for carrying tornado play-by-play, tornado coverage, tornado warnings, anything severe weather. You know, the National Tornado Center for the National Weather Service is in Norman, Oklahoma, just a suburb of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City has been hit many times with really severe tornadoes, as have so many towns across Oklahoma. A lot of people call it ground zero for tornadoes, although certainly there are tornadoes in Texas and Kansas and Nebraska, South Dakota. If you follow Reed Timmer on Facebook, or Twitter. Reed is one of these tornado chasers, always running around in his tornado cars and chasing after such things. Well, so Channel 9, and they gave me a T-shirt here. Oh, and I got the mug. See, honey, I really was at Channel 9. They gave me the mug. Marketing department. Thank you very much. So Channel 9 is the one with the Doppler radar on the grounds. They're tied in with the National Weather Service, of course, but tied in with all kinds of sources of data. They have, and one thing they have a helicopter, and plenty of TV stations do. This is a Bell Jet Ranger 407. And we hear the 406 model a lot in helicopter world, but this is a 407. And oh my goodness, is it fast. They were telling me that a lot of times they'll send the helicopter out to get a story. They'll shoot footage, and on the way back, they'll pass the other TV station's helicopters going 40 miles an hour slower that are still on their way out to the story. Or they'll be going out to a story, and they'll pass the other TV station's helicopter. So all I'm getting at is these guys are really serious about covering news all around central Oklahoma. And boy, the systems that they have in place are just amazing. The nice engineering staff there, and John Schilberg and Max, Jack Mills, a couple of gyms there. I spent a lot of time with them. And just the systems they have in place are just so amazing. Of course, if you're in television, maybe you deal with this stuff all the time. And I touch television sometimes. Like the helicopters have antennas on them that to send the ENG signal back, the video signal back, and actually it's two-way. So and these antennas, are self-pointing. They know which receive site that they want to point at because they tell it on a control panel. And then no matter where the helicopter goes, like this, the antenna stays pointing at that receive site. That seems like magic. I mean, we know it's all triangulation and GPS coordinates, and then it's tied in with the positioning of the helicopter in space. So you can work all this stuff out, but to see it in operation is so cool. The other thing that was interesting is while I was at the TV station, I was doing some work on an audio system, which I'll mention in a little bit. There was a fire reported at an oil tank in Perry, Oklahoma. And so they sent the helicopter up. It's on its way out there, and I was watching the return video from the helicopter as it's just flying over the flatlands of Oklahoma to get to Perry, Oklahoma, where this fire had been reported. And the whole time, the camera, the nose, the front mounted camera, it's slung under the nose of the helicopter. The camera was pointing almost backwards. It was looking past the left skid of the helicopter, and I'm thinking, why don't they turn the camera around? I want to see where the helicopter's going, not where it's been or not what it's passed by a moment ago. So I was really scratching my head over that, thinking, what, okay, maybe it's just me. I just want to see where they're going. Well, the next day, they told me something interesting about that the helicopter goes so fast. Now, for a helicopter, it goes about 140 knots, or maybe it's miles an hour. I'm not sure which it was. They were telling me, but it's faster than the other helicopters. And the servo motors and the gears that spin that pod around where the camera sits aren't strong enough to hold it in the wind, or especially if it gets a little bit off the wind. They have to spin it around to one of its stops, left or right, so it can't go any farther because the gearing won't hold it in 140 mile an hour wind. So, question answered. Mechanics do still come into play. You build it too big and too strong, and then it becomes too heavy to be worthwhile carrying around. So that was pretty interesting. But man, the helicopter, such great shots. We watched the the tanks explode, and then all the grass caught on fire all around the tank farm. And of course, the whole time we have two-way communications. Now, what I'm going to talk about in a little bit, probably the second half of the show, is this TV station sends out a swarm of reporters in cars and with cell phones. They don't have video, or if they do, it's not live video, but they do have cell phones and headsets or microphones. They go out to report on tornado conditions as the tornadoes are forming, as they're so they're chasing tornadoes, trying to get ahead of the tornado and reporting on where it's going, down to the intersection, down to the street block, down to the little town or hamlet where it's heading toward. So they need to be able to put anywhere from 1 to 8 reporters or storm spotters on the air at the same time. Again, audio only. And these storm spotters all need to be able to talk to each other when they're not on the air and talk to the meteorologist live when they are on the air. So we had to come up with a pretty sophisticated system to let a non-technical operator run the audio console, bringing these people in and out of air and talking to them either individually or corporately, and then letting the meteorologist talk to them individually or corporately. It's really a fun setup. There are some pictures on Facebook. I'll talk to Andrew, and maybe Andrew can go find those since we appear to have a computer open. It's from my posting late yesterday on Facebook. Maybe you could bring some of those up from KWTV. So anyway, that's what I was doing. We'll tell the complete story in a few minutes. Chris, let's get to your stories. You posted something, Chris, about a device that I'd seen mentioned on Facebook before. I really didn't know about. It's a company called TWiRT, and they're in the Czech Republic, and they make some accessories for RDS and for FM audio transmission and reception. But you were installing something pretty cool, a silent sensor. Tell us all about that.
Okay, well, the website is TWiRT, PIRA.cz, and they make TWiRT, right? And they make a lot of low-cost, interesting broadcast things. One of the things that they've had around for years that I love is they have freeware silent sensor. And essentially what it is, it's a piece of software, very lightweight, and you assign a sound card to it, and it monitors the audio coming in. And then based on what happens next, it can do actions. You can say based on the time of the day, based on audio levels. So you can say, for example, let me know when this stream is silent, but only during this time, or something like that. And essentially you just set up rules. You say, okay, if the audio goes silent, do this. You can have it do a closure. You can do SNMP trap. You can do an email. You can send pager. Whatever you want to do. But it's great because it's really light, low cost, and free, and pretty easy to set up. And you can run several instances of it, so you can monitor several different sources of audio, and as many as your sound card will support, and have them all running at the same time and monitoring. So what I did is here I'm using Axie, and I know that WheatNet has something similar. I'm using the Axie audio driver. And what that does is it essentially takes all the audio coming out for your Axie network, and it looks like a sound card to the software. So you can have all these different inputs of different Axie audio streams and set it up and assign them to each silence sensor. And in fact, they've gone as far on the software where you can label the title bar. So as you have the different programs open, the different instances open, they can be labeled all differently. So for example, here at Radio Milwaukee, I want to know what's going on coming out of the console. I want to know if the stream audio is good. And also, we have a situation here where we lease the license from the Milwaukee Public School District, and they run their own programming for school board meetings, which is not emanating from our studio. So that actually interrupts our feed and goes out over the air. So I want to monitor that, too, in case they have a technical problem and there's silence. So I actually have 3 different things I want to monitor. I want to monitor our in-house system, I want to monitor the stream, and I want to monitor the over-the-air feed. Well, all that I already have floating around on the Axie network. So all I had to do was put them as things I wanted to capture on the audio driver and assign those to each instance of the silent sensor software. And then I could have it do actions based on that. Now, you can do that with Axie. You can do that with multiple sound cards. I know some people do, left channel is one thing, right channel is another, then maybe a second sound card to give you 2 more channels. However you want to do it, it's great. And you can actually monitor the channels independently and that sort of thing as well. So it's really, really flexible. But what's great about that is, 1, it's free. Two, it's easy to set up. And then you have all, you can monitor whatever you need to monitor. So I know some places, really should monitor their stream to make sure that your streaming audio is still on the air, or anything else. So I was just real happy that, I was one of those moments where I had some downtime and was plotting on how to solve a problem. And I went, it'd be great. I know that this software exists. I've used it before to monitor streams. Wouldn't it be great to do all these things? And I dug a little bit and found that, yes, you can run as many instances of it as your computer can handle and as many audio inputs as you have. And then I took it a step further and went, well, I have this machine here that I'm using iProfiler on. And so I already have an Axia driver on it. And I have a bunch of free channels on it that I'm not using. So how can I put this all together and make this work? So I baked that up, and it's just running on a server in my operations center. So it's great because now I have all this heads up information, and it obviously has pretty little bar graphs and things, but more importantly is it sends out an email, and obviously, I get an email when things just go completely haywire, and we're off the air completely. But sometimes it doesn't really tell me what exactly the problem is. I can actually now narrow it down to not only do I know I'm off the air, but I can get an email telling me what exactly went wrong. Is it something at our building? Is it something at the Milwaukee School District building? Is it something completely different? It just gives me a little more awareness of what's going on. And again, what's great about this for the guys who are watching is it's free. So really, there's no reason not to throw it on a computer somewhere and monitor audio that you need to monitor. And there's so many different things that you can have it close ports on your serial port or on your parallel port to trigger external alarms, all kinds of things. It's very flexible. And the author of the software is very responsive to making changes too. They have a forum on their website at pira.cz, and people can make requests for features to the program and things. That was the first thing I did today.
What I would ask them to do, if the guy's responsive, is if you have a situation where you were in alarm and now you're not in alarm, have it make you a cup of hot chocolate.
You know what? You could probably have it do that if you have like a Keurig and you just have the hot chocolate ready to go. And then there's a relay closure that starts the Keurig machine. So you could do that. But it'll even do things like if you're running it on a computer with the audio software that your playout software, it'll take a screenshot and email you a screenshot of the software so you can see what it's doing.
So it's running on the same computer to do that.
Right. If you're running on the same computer, you can do that. You can have it take actions. You can have it launch programs. There's just so many features to this thing. It's fantastic. And, like I said, it's pretty easy to set up. And, even just for the basic monitoring for it, it's just very valuable for free. I mean, it just does a whole lot of things. And I've used it for years just for, minor things like streams and just little things that are more like every year with Intercom, we run a secondary channel on the stream of Christmas music, which is run on an automation system. So I want to make sure that doesn't stop, or if it does, if there's a problem with the automation or something, I know about it. So I've always run it on that to let me know if there's something going on. So you can't beat that. But it was just a little extra treat with the Axia IP driver, because all of a sudden, I wasn't worrying about how many sound cards I had plugged into the machine. I could just sit there and go, okay, I want these sources on here, and just each one shows up as a sound card on each instance of the software. And I know, like I said, WheatNet does the same thing if you have a Wheatstone system. Yeah. So it's just a nice little, it's a great tool.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that. You mentioned in your Facebook post that you were running this on a machine that had a multi-channel Axia IP audio driver, so you could subscribe to any audio on the network whatsoever. But of course, as you alluded to, this works fine on a PC or in an environment without Axia or Wheatstone or whatever you have. It works fine in a non-networked environment, but you would have to have a sound source, typically implying a sound card, for every single thing that you wanted to monitor on that PC. So having a networked audio system just makes it a lot easier to consolidate that operation into one location. Is that about right?
Right, exactly. Because otherwise you'd have to have the actual hardware to bring in the streams. And as I said before, there are ways to do that. For example, if you don't care if it's a stereo or mono source, you can monitor left and right channel independently. So you could, get two sound cards and end up with 4 inputs to monitor. So, there are ways to work around that if you don't have networked audio. Networked audio just makes it a whole lot easier, because all of a sudden now, pretty much anything you want to monitor, you can monitor. So, I could see, for example, if, I want to be able to, if we're using our ISDN for a backup, for example, I could actually really easily change the source to that. Or, if you have something that's going on the morning show only, that's a source, you can have it set to silent sense only during those hours. You can schedule.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. Yeah.
For example, I've got a person who uses, I've got a show at night over at Intercom that runs over a Comrex access. So I could say, okay, monitor this Comrex access for silence, but only do it from, weeknights from 7 to midnight. So, you could, there's a whole lot of possibilities there. It's really powerful if you take some time to dig into it. And, I was mentioning, it's great with the networked audio because you have basically an unlimited amount of sources you can play with. And, you could have as many instances of this program as you could, as your computer can support. But, that aside, 2 sound cards, you've got 4 inputs, and that's generally plenty for most people. And for example, if you have, 3 or 4 stations in your cluster you want to monitor, 2 sound cards and you're done. And more powerful computers today, you could easily do, 2 or 3 sound cards with multiple inputs. And, there are some other sound cards out there, that have multiple, 4-channel sound cards. You can do 2 of those and have 8. So, there's a whole lot of ways you can make this work. And, what's great, in my situation is it's real natural because I have it on the same computer as our logger. So I log, iProfiler logs a lot of those sources anyway. So it's just kind of, I have the computer sitting there, running audio anyway to record all this stuff. And I'm essentially, monitoring the streams that I'm capturing. So, it works out really well that way. So just a, great free tool. Obviously, there are limitations. It runs on a computer. So if the computer's not working, you're not going to know that your silent sensor's not working.
That's my usual problem.
However, right if you're technically inclined, there's free software such as, it's not free, but the free version is up to 10 computers, I believe. Is it Wheat something, Servers Alive. I can't remember the name of the company that does it, but Servers Alive will ping computers, report back that, if something's not responding, if your computer's off or crashed or, something like that. So, if you set it up right and your IT department's strong, it shouldn't be much of an issue. Which actually leads me into one of the other things I've been working on since we're already on this road.
Oh, multiple computers?
Well, pinging and computers not working and ways to get around that. I had a situation a while back. I've talked about it on the show before. Our primary link from our studio to our transmitter site is over a T1 using a ZIP1 box codec.
Oh, okay.
If that goes down, I've got on the other end of the path, I've got a switcher, Broadcast Tools web-enabled switcher, silent sensed switch that will switch to a barrack stream over a different path. So if for some reason the T1 goes down, the switcher should automatically switch and pick up the stream, and we're good to go. However, the Broadcast Tools switch apparently every once in a while just decides to not function correctly, or in my case, it functioned too well. I had the threshold too high, and there was enough noise on the line that held the switch open. The problem was the web interface went down, so I couldn't get into the switcher to manually switch it, which is why I bought a web-enabled switcher. Was if I wanted to, on the far end, switch the audio path on my own, I could do that by logging in and switching it. So what happened was when the T1 went down, there was a ticking on the line or something, coming out of the box that held the switch open. It thought there was valid audio there, and I couldn't log into the web to switch it. So, and what I had to do is ended up having to drive over. Fortunately, I have a CD backup that kicks in after, a minute or so, and it detected everything and kicked in, and it was fine. But the lesson was I needed some way to be able to restart this interface remotely if this happened again. So I went online and I bought an IP controlled power switch, and it is really, really cool. And a lot of people have heard of these, but they've gotten really kind of really fancy. The one I bought is not only can you log into it and make the switches, but it also pings the device that it's connected to. And if it stops responding to pings, it'll automatically recycle the power and send you an email letting you know that it happened. So essentially what I've done now is I have on the far side, I've got a network connection, a VPN connection between here and there. I now have the broadcast tool switch plugged into this. So if for some reason the web interface stops responding and it doesn't reply to pings, or even, I want to get into it and I can't, I can direct the box to restart the broadcast tool switch. So it's kind of neat, and it works really well. And it's already once detected that it wasn't replying to pings, and restarted it and sent me an email and said, "Hey, by the way, I just did something. Thought you should know." And sure enough, I mean, every time I've logged into that web interface, it's been up. So, it's another tool, and especially now, I know a lot of people are using devices like the Tieline Bridget and the Zip One and some of these other boxes where, the remote end, there might not be anybody there. A situation just happened the other day with that, a station that I do some work for, and I had to talk with them about buying one of these boxes. They use a Tieline Bridgets, and the transmitter side went down. It just stopped responding. And so they were off the air until they reset it. And I mentioned it before, and they kind of didn't want to spend the money. And now that it happened again, I mentioned it one more time. But there would have been a situation where I was able to log in. They have a Nautel transmitter. I was able to log into the Nautel transmitter and see that there was stuff going on. So obviously, they had a network connection. The box just needed to be rebooted. And, in this situation, all I would have needed to do, in fact, in this situation, the box stopped responding to pings. So the power brick would have automatically rebooted the box. But at any rate, I could have done it manually. But, exactly what I thought happened. One of their employees went over to the transmitter, unplugged the tie line, plugged it back in, and it was fine. So had we had one of these boxes, the downtime, instead of being a half an hour, would have been 2 minutes, would have detected it and made the switch. But, it's something I recommend, especially in these situations where, you may have remote equipment and you have internet access. And even if you don't have internet access, since these boxes can ping internally, at least you got a better chance of things coming back to life. Even if you can't get in and manually switch it, just get it on its own network in the transmitter building, talking to each other. And this way, if the box senses that it's dead, that it's connected to something that's not responding, it can take the step for you and get you back into business. So,
do you recall what brand or model this box was?
I think I went to remotepowerswitch.com was the website, and they're all kind of made by the same company, and just different people put their own logos on them. But this one, it was remotepowerswitch.com, I believe, is the site I went to.
Can you associate? Can it cycle the power on individual outlets, or is it all at once?
The expensive ones can, sure. They have ones that, they have boxes where it's, one switch for the entire strip. The box I bought was $100. It just had one outlet and a Ethernet jack on it. And
so I guess
web port.
Well, you could buy multiple boxes, but I would hope that if a box had a strip on it, individually controllable outlets, hopefully you could associate its ping response with a given outlet. So if you had one device that wasn't responding to a ping, you could just reboot that one device.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is the software is written that way, where you can say, okay, do this action if this this device doesn't reply. And looking at the web interface, I can easily see where they just scale it. And if there's a box with multiple ports, you can see in the software how they would set that up. So it absolutely can do that. But that it's one of those nice handy things to have, because now in the past I've built those in sites that have like a ARC 16 or something. I've built the boxes where I've thrown a relay in there with a slave relay, and I can just hit the Burke, hit a channel on the Burke, and it just relay closes temporarily and latches and let's go and reboots the power core. So I've made those boxes, but these are really nice because they're clean and IP based, and again can remotely ping. And so that way, sometimes you don't even have to do anything. If it pings and just all of a sudden stops getting a response, it'll ping like every minute or two. It'll automatically do the job for you. So, I love those, because then you just get an email going, hey, there's a problem, but I fixed it. Don't worry about it. I can roll back over and go back to sleep. It's great.
If power cycling it will fix the problem. And you know what? A lot of times that with whether it's broadcast equipment or other stuff, if it's got a CPU in it and an operating system that runs, we all know that it's possible. It's hard to trap out every possible error, and it's possible for the thing to get stuck and quit responding to pings. And So there you go.
Well, and also, you know, I mean, good engineering practice too in a lot of these cases. You know, in my case, it was just a bad design. But you know, the transmitter site, you know, always keep those types of boxes on UPSs and things like that, because you know, a lot of times when these things need to be rebooted, it's because there was a power bump and it locked the device up because it, you know, there's a brownout and the power went away and came back. So, you know, good engineering practice, devices that, you know, pretty much anything now runs on a computer. So runs on an operating system. So keep all of that stuff on a UPS so that it, you know, continues to run and you know, you minimize those problems. But these are great in those situations where, you know, it just, you know, you have a device that, again, you know, the broadcast tools box, it's a great box, but, you know, its built-in web server just occasionally kind of goes crazy, and it'll still work. I mean, the guts of it still work, and it silent senses and it does everything. Just the web interface becomes not responsive, and they may come up with a firmware update at some point, or you know, to fix that. But until they do, this is a great way to handle that.
Can you have it monitor itself and reboot? If
So yeah, somebody mentioned that. You know, it was funny. A friend of mine, Mark Mueller, is a fantastic AM engineer, good friend of mine.
Yes,
said, well, how do you control the box if the box locks up? So I said, well, I bought another one that feeds that box, so I can remotely reboot the reboot box. And
they're both going to go out
right down the line. So
yeah,
you know, but again, it's one of those situations where, you know, yeah, you could go down the rabbit hole and have these boxes on everything, and you know, but it's all about, you know, finding the points of the obvious points of failure and doing what you can to minimize those problems. So in my situation, this was something that came up, and I thought about it, and I went, okay, I'm not going to get burned by this again. I'm going to make sure that, you know, I minimize this risk. And so that was the solution to that, and so far it's worked really well. Now, if the broadcast tool switcher smokes or something, there's nothing that a power box is going to do. But you know, it seems like that, you know, happened once, fool me once, it's not going to happen again. So you know, this takes care of that.
You know, the way we used to solve these problems back in the day was we kept a full-time engineer at the transmitter site.
Right. You're adorable. You know, no, you know, and that's true. I mean, but taking that out even further, now I've got, and it was funny because I had to send my bio to Andrew. I mentioned something like I'm responsible for 20-some transmitters. You know, I mean, you know, I've got to do these things in order to be able to just remain sane and make sure that these people can stay on the air. You know, so you come up with these ways to remote control and kind of remote manage everything you can. And maybe that, you know, in fact, since I have the microphone and there's nobody else around, I'm going to keep going here and talk about something else that's been hot in the news is LogMeIn disappearing.
Oh, yeah, LogMeIn disappearing, sure. Go ahead.
Because, again, you know, there's a tool that a lot of us use to manage remote stuff. Now, I've moved on, and I found it worthwhile to do the software I've been using lately. It's expensive, but for the level that I operate at, I need to pay for it, is Go to Assist, and it has, you know, you can have up to, you know, 1,000 remotely assisted computers with one operator. You pay per operator. So I just have to buy one license and have it on all these computers, and I can run them, you know, remotely manage all of these computers. But there are some other things out there if people are looking to get some things done. I've been playing with one called Meraki, which is from Cisco. It's not necessarily a remote client, but it is remote management of PCs, and it has a built-in VNC client on it. So I've been kind of playing with that. So that's merki.cisco.com, I believe. And it's free, and you can monitor as many computers as you want. And, you know, they do it because it's advertising for their line of stuff. So there's one.
Because is there a central rendezvous server for that, or must you open ports so you can go in?
Well,
okay.
you would have to open ports. Obviously, I believe you have to have a plug-and-play enabled router for the ports to work for VNC, but it does have an agent that runs on the remote PC, and you say, I want a remote session. And it seems to work. It's only been a few cases where I haven't gotten it to work, but in most cases, on most routers, it works just fine. I would recommend trying it because, like I said, it's free, and it actually has some really powerful management tools for the computers that the agents are running on. For example, you can run command line commands. You can look at the process, a task manager remotely and kill tasks and things. It tells you how much free space you have on the hard drive, Last time it was offline. It's really nice
Yeah.
remote management for computers. So
What
that's one to try.
what do you think about TeamViewer?
TeamViewer is good. However, they it's an honor system thing, and because of that, and because of the changes they've made with LogMeIn, it's become a little more restrictive for the free stuff. So they started limiting the amount of time a session can last. They've started detecting if you're running it on multiple computers on a network. So they've started to kind of crack down on that.
I wish. I'm sorry. Finish up, then I'll.
I say, really the truth is that there's really mostly never a free lunch, and LogMeIn. I saw that coming, and that's why I moved away from LogMeIn about a year ago, as I really saw that it was coming. And about 6 months ago, they stopped allowing unlimited number of computers on an account too. And when they started doing that, I knew that the end was near. But if you're looking to spend money and you have a budget for it, I do recommend go to Assist. It's fantastic, and it does a lot of things that LogMeIn does. And for example, I have it running on all my computers here and on my clients, and so I mean, it's really easy for me to see at a glance what computers are online. You log in and you have one screen that shows everything that's going on. Plus, then they have their live kind of IT part of that, where you can have somebody launch something on a computer in real time, and then you can connect and do some work as well. So again, when I mentioned 20 some transmitters, there's a lot of IT related things with computers and servers and things. A great example is a site where I'm using a Comrex access for an STL. I want to be able to, on the studio side, on the transmitter side, be able to log into the box and make changes to it. Unfortunately with the Comrex access, the built-in web server on the device doesn't have all of the options as the web interface does. So so for example, if you log into the Comrex box from the outside world on their web page, from outside, it doesn't have the same features as their software tool. So if I have a computer running there that I can log into to manage the device on the network, so that runs it. So all kinds of little things that really help to make that happen. And while we're on the subject of IT, one more tip as we're talking about free cool things. Another thing I ran into the other day is I had a site that needed an NTP server. And the reason they did is because their automation system doesn't see the public internet. So it needed somewhere to get time for time syncing.
Oh, okay.
Which is, you could buy a, like a ESE time device and sync it with GPS or something. But I found, now the name has escaped me. It's Mine something, MEIN's Mine Hall, maybe. But it's an NTP server software, and it syncs up with a bunch of time servers nearby, and it calculates which ones are the most accurate, and then that box itself becomes a time server for your house. And so I set that up on a computer that was dual homed, and so it saw the internet and saw the network for the automation system, and I ran that as a time server. So again, another free little tool if you're looking for it. It's just about as accurate as you're going to get. It's not,
I'm sorry. What
milliseconds.
What was the name of that tool? What was the name of that software?
I want to say, and if somebody on the chat room can if they're able to find it, I think it's MEIN something. I have to look at my computer again to look it up.
There's an NTP client and server that I really like called About Time. It's been around for a long time, and it runs I love the software. However, I'm told by our guys at Telos, our developers, that the NTP time server that it offers is non-standard, and Linux machines will not pick up their time from it, or at least it's not compatible with Linux. Linux doesn't understand it, so it's unfortunate. It will update Windows computers. At least that's been my experience. But About Time is both. It's a client, from the internet, and then of course it can present NTP time service to a second network if you want to, or if you don't want all 28 of your computers on the network all pinging some time server, using your bandwidth. You can just have one computer do it, and the others get locally their time from that. Yeah. So my solution has been on Axia systems. As I run two programs on some given computer that's dual homed, one internet, one Axia, and About Time is the client, and I forget the name of the server, but I found some free server that works just great. And although I had to use an older version of it, the newer version of it was just full of crapware. But an older version, they hadn't monetized it yet, and the older version works fantastic. So use that, and all the Linux machines pick it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of GoToAssist, as we're talking, I'm logging into my GoToAssist. I'm going to open up the session on that computer and take a look and and see what it's running. That's again one of the great things about remote access is I can I can log in and take a look at any of the machines, and I can actually tell you exactly what I'm running. But I think I believe that the software that I'm using, the server software, actually will actually run on Linux and Mac and PC as well. So I do believe it plays with Linux okay.
You mentioned, Chris, and we're going to have to break for commercial pretty soon, but one question. Earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned VNC and UPnP in the same sentence. And I thought, from my experience, every VNC, I've always had to forward ports, make sure those ports forwarded matched, to disambiguate which computer I was trying to access remotely. But maybe if there's a solution for VNC that doesn't require that, it might be a good solution. Because look, I hate disobeying the honor system of TeamViewer. I wish TeamViewer cost less money, but I'm not in charge of their pricing policy. But I don't think I want to pay their price. And you said GoToAssist is pretty expensive. Maybe you could embellish on that a bit. But tell me about VNC. Is there any non-port forward method to using it remotely?
Well, there are some, and I'm trying to recall. I have to do a little bit more research, but I believe the Cisco service I was talking about, the Meraki, I believe that uses uses UPnP to phone back to Cisco in order to make that connection. So it kind of works sort of like a SIP server would or a stun server would. It makes that connection. So I believe that does. And I also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe UltraVNC, uvnc.com, I believe can roll your own where it will launch and phone out. Because that's the thing with firewalls is it has to be able to, if the originating computer opens the port by going outbound, then generally the inbound is fine. So there are a couple of roll your own clients like that where it will open an outbound port for you, and that's where UPnP comes in because that's how that all works. If a router is UPnP compliant, then when the device says, "Hey, or when the software says, "Hey, I need you to have these ports open," it says, "Okay, go ahead, we'll take care of it." So you do want to look for that. Right now there is no. I can't say that there's a real easy way to do any of it. You're going to have to be a little savvy. So keep that in mind.
And for these things to work right, I guess you got to do what GoToAssist and TeamViewer and LogMeIn do. You got to run a rendezvous server, and if you really want to make sure it's bulletproof, the rendezvous server must relay all data. You can have the rendezvous server, try to establish a peer-to-peer connection, but just like with Telos's zip server, if it can't help each end establish peer-to-peer, then it's going to have to be the relay server, because both units can see the relay server, obviously, and it can relay that data, and that means big pipes. That means somebody's got to pay for big pipes. Now, the Telos Zip 1 industry is far smaller than the entire IT industry. But GoToAssist, TeamViewer, these other guys, they're paying big bucks for lots of bandwidth every month to service all their customers free and paid.
By the way, Meinberg is this. I just logged into my server here to take a look at what I was running for the time server. MEINBERG, and it's NTP time server by Meinberg. Okay. And they sell hardware, and this software they offer for free, but they also sell, time syncing software, time syncing hardware, and those sorts of things. But essentially, I use their time server software, and I just have a PC that runs as kind of the master clock, and it does all my house stuff. And so far it's worked really, really well, and for the low price of free, which I really like.
Wenco has a great idea. Maybe Google could add remote desktop to Hangouts.
Well, Google has the Chrome remote desktop, which works pretty well.
That's right. Does Chrome have to be up and running, the Chrome browser?
No, you do have to install it, but on Windows machines, the Chrome will run in the background as a background process. Okay. So you could do that. And that actually does a pretty good job of traversing firewalls and things. So
Yeah.
that is certainly an option if you want to go down that route.
I think these guys at Team, I really like TeamViewer. It works so reliably, and it formats well. It's usually easy to use, and I just don't want to pay their price. I'd rather pay something less. Sure would.
Their licensing is really expensive. In fact, I looked at them before I looked at Go to Assist, and it was going to be more expensive to go through TeamViewer than through Go to Assist.
Wow. My needs, probably like a lot of people, I have 2 or 3 people who need to use the service, and TeamViewer seems really expensive once you get past one person. One person, it's not horrible. 2, 3, 4 people, it seems like, oh my gosh, sky's the limit on price. So, oh well. Hey,
by the way, By the way, real quick, I do see some comments about UPnP and Black and Not For Me, and it's actually gotten a lot safer over the years, and it's not nearly as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. So,
except for the routers that have the UPnP port flipped around, looking at the WAN side, and there are a certain number of them, and if you find one of those, you got complete access to the whole network.
Right, but generally, that's becoming more and more rare, and
yes.
In fact, a lot of networks nowadays almost have to be UPnP compliant because there's a lot of things that require it to work right. So
yeah,
there's a lot of still FUD flying around from years ago when Gibson made the big deal about UPnP, and he was right that. I mean, that was actually baked into certain Windows configurations with certain routers that would open up a whole huge hole. But that's gotten a lot better, and it's actually become pretty reliable, and it will save you a lot of headaches.
And I thought that Steve's revelation, actually, it wasn't Gibson's revelation. There was a guy who did a doctoral thesis on that subject. He pinged every computer in the world several times, or every IP address, and figured out how many, what percentage of them had this bug that you said, as you said, baked into the router.
Right.
Anyway, hey, we need to pause right here. You're watching This Week in Radio Tech, or listening to it. It's episode number 199. And by the way, that means that next episode it's another War Stories. We'll try to make it a Super War Stories episode. Yes, we'll go on a marathon for 4 hours. How about that, Andrew? 4-hour War Stories episode.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, stories from the field, fixing things from the towers, under the transmitter, in the trenches, under the audio console. We're going to talk about it on next week's show, a War Stories episode. Our show this week, though, is brought to you by folks who happen to be my wonderful employer, and that's Telos Alliance. And our show specifically brought to you by the Axia Element audio console. When you look at an Axia Element, you may have seen pictures of different sizes of Axia Elements. There are literally tens of thousands of permutations of how you can design your Axia Element console. Did you know that an Axia Element console can have as few as 2 faders? Yep. I've seen one in France. The main DJ wanted to be able to control his mic, and they built him up a console. It's the monitor and 2 fader module, and that's all that's in it. And then you can have an enormous console. In the same studio in France, they have a 40 fader Axia Element console. So from 2 faders to 40 faders, my goodness, you can build it up how you want. You can put buttons in there to do, first of all, whatever you want. Just give you GPIO closures, or start things with an external automation system, or with the Pathfinder software from Telos. So you can have it start a pot of coffee, email somebody, lock the doors, and turn on the disco lights all at the same time if you want to. You can also have telephone controller panels. You can have intercom panels. These are really cool. So right there from the console top, you can intercom wherever you need to, other intercom stations, and other locations that aren't equipped with an intercom panel, like a speaker and microphone. You can intercom to those, like a front door. So all these accessories are available. Oh, plus talent accessories that you can embed in the furniture. So if you've got a morning show with several talent sitting around, they can each have their own mic on off, a cough switch, a talkback switch, so they can secretly talk to the board operator without being on the air. There's also a producer panel that lets a show producer who's not on the air talk to several different people as he or she needs to. The possibilities are just unbelievably endless. And there are more features coming, like the intercom panels being able to connect to SIP servers. So now an intercom can make a phone call Just lots of cool stuff. Design the Axia Element console any way you like. Most folks get 8 faders, 12 faders, 16 faders, 18 faders, 24 faders. Size it how you like. Get the button accessories that you want there. Leave some blank panels for future growth. Put a phone controller in there. There's even a production module that gives you instant access to EQ and to panning. If you're running the console in 5.1 mode, this is possible. You can also set some 5.1 configuration. Just amazing the things you can do with an Axia Element audio console. Plus, they're built like a brick. I mean, the extrusions have got ribs in all the right places. They are really strong. You can stand on one and you won't hurt it. The buttons, this is so intelligent the way it's designed. All the buttons on the console top are protected by a little bit of a guard, whether it's the on-off buttons or the program assignment buttons or the buttons for preview or talkback or to seize a phone call. These are all protected by a little bit of a bezel around them. And this makes it, you have to definitely push a button in order to push it, but they're easy to push. So if you drop something on the console, chances are you're not going to accidentally actuate a button. Really intelligent design has gone into the Axia Element audio console. And I got to work with one on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, making sure it was configured just right for this incredible tornado coverage, play-by-play tornado reporting at Channel 9 in Oklahoma City. I'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. Go to the web, check it out, would you? You can go straight to the website, axiaaudio.com/element. It'll take you to the page, and you can read all about the Element Audio Console. There are thousands in use. I think it's over 3,000 elements, and then we've got a bunch of the other consoles in the line in use around the world. Very popular. We got one at my radio station, a little one. Oh, it's cool. All right, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech, episode 199. Chris Tarr is with us. Looks like Chris Tobin has come online. Andrew, has Chris Tobin checked in yet?
Not yet.
Okay, why don't you see if he's available? I see he's online, so maybe he'll be there. Okay, yeah, Chris Tarr, I want to follow up on a couple of things. You had mentioned that maybe Ultra VNC is UPnP compatible. I know there's a lot of in fact, I know that it is because if you're the remote site, you can initiate like a support session with Ultra VNC, and that's the VNC flavor that I had myself used for years. Was Ultra VNC. So I need to check back into that and see what's
yeah, because I seem to remember they make a you can create an install package where you type in the server that you want to connect to, and I believe you can actually create a relay server or a mirror server, and you can send out that package and install that, and it'll actually do all the hard work for you as long as you have the the INI file or whatever built correctly. So I used to use that. Yeah. Before I did, before TeamViewer became popular and go to Assist, I created those packages, those UVNC packages, to do remote support where I could say, okay, run this and it'll connect to me and I'll see you come online and take care of it. So I believe there's a way to do that through UVNC, but again, it just depends on how good you are working with those things to get those running, which leads me to the other story real quick that I was going to talk about, which was this morning with my KVM switching, which was absolutely a case of just sitting down and getting to it. So in our old facility, the previous engineer had installed a really nice high-end keyboard, video, mouse extender and matrix switchers so that you could sit at a console and see all these different computers. Not only could you see computers that didn't have monitors and things attached to them, but it also mirrored, for example, our Studio Encos, our automation systems, and those sorts of things. We could actually mirror that onto a console and see what's going on. So when we moved all that all got disconnected and moved around, and I couldn't obviously put it back together the way it was. And I had no clue how this thing worked. So it kind of sat around, and I kept going, one of these days I really need to put this together. So I finally, yesterday, set aside a block of time and figured it out. And it is really, really cool. It's essentially like a big router for keyboard, video, and mouse. It's got, I believe, I think the one I have is 32 or 48 ports. And so on the computer side, there's a little dongle that goes in where the, for the monitor and the keyboard and everything. And then they either have one or two Cat 5 jacks in the back. If there's two, then there's a mirror, and then if it's one, it's just a direct to the switch. And it works just like a KVM extender, except you plug it into this router, and then there's a console connected to that, and then you can cycle through and see all the devices connected to it, and bring any one of them up to this console. So it's way more, it's way bigger and more intricate than your basic little 4-button, connect 2 computers or 4 computers and push back and forth. This can have a matrix of up to 40-some computers, and it also has server software, so you can save different configurations and routes and all these things. So it was really neat. But it was one of those deals where, I kept looking at this thing going, man, this is really complex. And I've never dealt with anything like this before. And it's just I've been putting it off. So finally, I sat down, grabbed the manual for the server software, and I did what I did with all this stuff is instead of relying on the previous guy's programming and formatting, I just completely wiped it out, started over, so that I had to build this thing back from scratch. So having done that, I was able to learn how this thing worked and really made it do what I wanted to do. But it's really nice because for example, I don't have to be in the studio looking over somebody's shoulder to do things. Or if I'm working on, the computers themselves for the studio are in the rack room. And so, for example, if nobody's in the studio and I want to do some work, I can actually work on the physical computer and be right next to it with the keyboard and the mouse, taking control of everything. So, it's really nice the way that it mirrors. So that was my little project this morning.
So a quick question, what would be the difference? Let's say that I can't afford a big Avocent or some other big KVM, and I don't want to run all these cables. How effective is it for me just to run a remote desktop program and be able to get into the various computers and give people live tech support or do some work that way? Well, so the difference between a remote desktop and KVM, compare that.
Well, in this case, the KVM, you're in the physical building. You're not actually remotely desktoping. And generally that's why I didn't really mess with it until now. I've been here, over 6 months now, and I just now hooked it all up because I do 99% of my stuff. I just bring it up on a remote desktop. But, the TOC is in the first floor. I'm on the second floor. And so if I had to do something where, for example, I needed to put a CD in and hit a prompt, I'd have to go downstairs for the CD in, run back upstairs, get to the, or I would have a keyboard and a monitor, and I just keep plugging it into the various devices in the racks as I was working on them. So, the difference is really there are times when you have to have a physical keyboard and a monitor attached to a device. For example, let's say the network card goes bad. Well, it's no longer on the network. You can't run remote access software. You can't remote desktop. Yeah. So there are times where you just have to touch it. And what's great about this is now I have all of my computers and servers connected to it. So I may not use it very often, but it's there if for some reason I can't remote desktop in. I can just bring it up and in the TOC, and I can sit there and do what I need to do with it. So, but it's really kind of neat. It all runs over Cat5, and it's almost like networking for video. It's really kind of cool.
Hey, Chris Tobin has made it into the show. Chris Tobin, how are you? Welcome in.
I'm good. I hope you guys can hear me. I had to rush back in. I'm back home. It's quick setup, so I hope everything is working out well. Guys, sound
great.
Good?
Louder than ever. 5x5.
Excellent. So how's everybody
5x9.
doing?
I always get that phrase wrong. 5x5, 2x2. I don't know what that is.
5x9. You're 5x9.
5x9. There you go. You're blowing my ears out. Plenty loud. Hey, so Chris Tarr has regaled us with some really cool, great advice, stuff that makes your life easier around the studio. Chris Tobin, have you run across anything? What's come across your horizon in the past few days that makes life easier for engineers? I guess it's a big tip show. What's your tip?
Big tip show. Let's see what's made my life easier or have helped people do. Well, I've been showing folks how to use a remote desktop and get that done remotely. I heard you guys talk about Ultra VNC, which is quite popular, and I do agree with you, Kirk. TeamViewer can be a little bit on the pricey side for what you want to do with it. And whatever I recently had, I was working with folks on some VPN clients, I think with their routers, it was Cisco, and some of the software that comes with that, and working with folks and making it easy doing things in that sort. It's hard because you guys were talking about network access and the infamous routers that have UPnP facing the WAN side and stuff like that. And a lot of folks I've been working with lately, some corporate ITs, remote access is just something they won't allow unless you go through certain hoops and loops. And TeamViewer, I found out on a couple of places I worked with recently, is not permitted because of
Yeah.
What is it? The technical section of Sarbanes-Oxley, section 401 or something like that. It's for security.
Well, Sarbanes-Oxley sure has affected the people who pay attention to it in our industry.
Yeah.
There were broadcasters who would not allow their studio to transmitter link to be an IP link because that's how they were interpreting Sarbanes-Oxley. So it's okay if it's an analog in the clear 950 megahertz STL that anybody with any brains at all technically could blow up and interfere with, but it can't be on a IP link.
Because you have to be able to ensure that IP link cannot be compromised.
But you didn't have to be able to ensure but you didn't have to be able to ensure that the 950 link could not be compromised.
Right. I recently did a project with IP radios that operate at 5.8 gigahertz. And in the radio units, the terminal units, there's two pieces, a bidirectional IP. And I discovered, working with a couple of folks, that if you turn on the encryption in them, then you can pass muster for the Sarbanes-Oxley stuff. So I worked with a radio group that was looking to do some outside broadcast events, but they weren't allowed to do IP unless they could guarantee, and that was true for the DSL connections. So they had to run VPN clients to was it Stunnel? I think it's S Tunnel. I think they were using for something. It was an interesting app.
Well, you bring up a good point, and in fact, I'm working with another company that I do some work with, a small group of stations, and they finally I finally talked them into making the jump of just going to VPN clients rather than with Log Me In going away. And then the added benefit, I explained to them, they had a couple of locations, and so what I did is I bought some Cisco small business routers. I'm able to set up a point-to-point VPN with all their locations too. So now they can, all their locations can talk to each other. They can share audio. Then, the people who do need remote in can use a VPN client to get in and use remote desktop. And so there is one good thing that, some good things are coming out of this, in that, I was never a big fan of, using Log Me In as a business tool like that for radio stations. So this kind of, fixes that issue. But, the prices have come down substantially on, lower end small business gear like that. So, I could get Cisco for, $300 or $400. I was able to equip their 3 sites with Cisco routers with VPN and end-to-end tunnels and things, and really do it the right way. And it was, relatively speaking, inexpensive.
Yeah, that's exactly what I recently did. And that's exactly how we got things working, and everybody was happy and compliant, which worked out really well. And recently, I just worked with a station. They're using a remote control product, I won't say the name, that doesn't support the 2048 encryption for email, for SMTP and stuff, like Gmail, and everybody's switching over to that. So Stunnel, I think is the way you pronounce it, is a great app. So you can get around that issue. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I understand that we're up against a time limit here, and I've got a couple pictures to share, and I want to see if we can get those in. Chris Tarr, I understand you got to run. Buddy, thank you so much for your participation today. It's been a great show, and the advice is terrific. I'm going to try to get everything you said in the show notes. How about that?
Well, hopefully you can get it all in there. I've been a wealth of information today.
All right. Hey, Chris Tobin, if you could hang on for a few more minutes, we're going to run through some pictures. Maybe you can comment and give your take on a few things. So let's go with the show and tell here as we close out our show. Andrew, how about that first picture? Oh, okay. There's now this was from my trip to Channel 9, KWTV in Oklahoma City, where they really take weather seriously, and, well, other news too. And so I installed a little Axia console, but that's their main news production audio console. It is a CalRec. It's a few years old, but man, do they know how to make that thing walk and talk and sing and dance. So that's where the main operator sits during all of their local news and weather productions. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the weather radar that they own. That's on site at KWTV on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. Next slide. This, that's the tower. That tower's going to come down soon. It was built in 1954, approximately, and built by a bridge company. What is it? Idaco something? I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, big tower coming down. That's the building right there, the Channel 9 building. They have all sales, news, administration, engineering, everything, transmitters, all there. Next one. Okay, here we go. This is where one of the news producers sits, and there's a Telos VSET 6. They actually have two different phone systems running off the same Telos VX now. They have a 4-line call-in system for reporters, and they have an 8-line call-in system for the storm chasers. So you're looking now at the VSET 6, which they use for the 4-line system. Next slide there. Probably have a couple pictures of this. Yeah, that's a little bit closer up picture of the system that they use for the reporters to call in. These are the guys that go in after the damage has been done. They go report on that. Next slide there. Another picture of the CalRec console. They have all their bumpers, liners, all the swoosh music, sound effects they play during newscasts and weather on that 360 systems. Next one. That console, by the way, can do 15 mix minuses. So it does a good job. What's next, Andrew? There we go. Oh, this is the Weather Center. So this, interestingly, they run a lot of the same software that I'm accustomed to using at the station in Nashville, where I occasionally do some fill-in weather. David Payne, the chief meteorologist there, along with Lacey and Matt, put together all their weather forecasts there. So next slide. Their weather center is actually off camera. It's not seen on set. It's behind the set. So there's just a close-up of some of the inputs that we had to put on the Axia console. So that's an Axia element. Weather intercom comes in there. So when somebody calls the weather intercom, it's there. The CalRec console's mix minus comes back to there, so we can feed people with that. Now here's some of the people who call in. Marty and Bobby and Tom or Rob and Sky News. Sky News is the name of their helicopter. Next slide there. And what else do we have here? Oh, so there's gives you a view of the operator who handles all these storm reporters, storm spotters, storm chasers. Yeah, that's right, storm chasers. That's where he stands. He has access to the station's intercom system, and then of course the Axia console. And then to the far end there's the 12-line VSET. Let's look at the next slide and see if I have a different view of that. Yeah, there's looking from the other end. So there's the 12-line that they put the 8 different storm chasers on the air with. And the way that we've got the element console configured, if the storm chaser is not on air, in other words, if he's on the phone, but the fader is in the off position, all of those storm reporters can talk to each other. And they're tied in with the intercom system, and they're listening at a lower level to the program audio. So they can all have a conversation about who should go on next, and be on the intercom system too. But when we put them on the air, then they don't hear all that mumbo jumbo of the other reporters. Then they get a mix minus of program audio. It's still interruptible. There's a talkback button for each caller on the console, so the board op there can interrupt anybody and talk to them in their return feed. But again, what the outside reporters hear when they're on the air is slightly different than what they hear when they're not on the air. Any more pictures, or was that the last one? Ah, there you go. There's the column of monitors in the weather center, and I think we had at least one more picture there. After that one, is that it? Is that? Oh yeah, okay. that's what the weather person sees. When they're standing behind all their monitors on the set. Maybe have a picture of the green screen as well, the chroma key wall. Nope, that's it. Okay, that's it. Back to me. All right, so that's a quick tour of the Weather Center and what's behind there at KWTV in Oklahoma City. Thanks again to them for their great hospitality. Chris Tobin, you want to wrap us up with anything else you have to say? We got to go.
No, I came in too late. I really don't have anything to contribute other than, that's about it. I'm here.
I'm glad you're here, buddy. Hey, will you be here next week for our War Stories episode, number 200?
Yes, I am juggling a few things to make sure that Thursday stays open because I keep missing out on good opportunities.
Hey, if you can't, that's okay. But if you can, we sure would appreciate having you in here. And I got to plan the guest situation as well. Somebody will have to sit out, I suppose. Maybe it should be me. I've been on too many times.
Well, I sat out in the last two, so that's all.
Yeah, we'd like to have you back for that reason, if none other. All right, this is the end of the show. Thanks, y'all, for being with us. Chris Tarr was here for most of the show from 88.9, his station in Milwaukee that he takes care of. Also, Chris Tobin has been here for a short time with some good advice, too, wrapping things up. Thanks to everybody in the chat room for helping us out. We always appreciate that. Bob Holowenko, you're just golden. Thank you to anybody else who chimed in as well. And Andrew Zarian, as always, for producing the show and doing the switching back in New York City. We appreciate you at the GFQ Network. Our show's been brought to you by Axia Audio and the Axia Element Audio Console. We'll see you next week for War Stories, episode 200. See you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.